This podcast is brought to you by Giant Food. And today, more than ever, they are committed to you because we are all in this together so we can continue to share the little things that matter.
Recorded live from the lobby of the Line Hotel in Adams Morgan, Washington, D.C. Full Service Radio is proudly supported and hosted by Simplecast, the easiest way for a podcast creator to publish and distribute audio on the internet. For more information, visit simplecast.com.
Peace, everyone, and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting live from the lobby of the Line, D.C. This podcast is where dynamic people of color in the food and agriculture space share their personal food journeys, passions, and perspectives that stem from the land, all exemplifying the spirit of activism in their own edible way. Let's get started. Peace and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting here on Full Service Radio. So for today, we are talking photography, nature, and Zen, a combination that you may not typically think about when you're indulged in either of the three. But meet Tonya Peele, a North Carolina native and mindfulness advocate who hails from a legacy of farmers, sharecroppers, and cultivators of the land. Her passion for nature and capturing moments led Tonya to the birth of Plant and Shoot, which we'll learn more about today. She is also the creator of the Zen Camera Club and also guides meditations on Insight Timer. Tonya, welcome to Edible Activist. I'm so excited to have you.
Hi, Melissa. I'm equally excited to be here.
So Tonya and I are Instagram friends. And I have to include this preface, and it's one of the reasons why I'm just like super excited to hold this interview, because we have been connected digitally via social media, Instagram, for the last like 3 or so years. And this is our very first time actually holding a conversation. We've never met. And it's whenever I think back to like, you have your supporters, but when you think back to like your core folks, and Tonya, you would never know this because we've never had a conversation. It's you, Tonya, and the other two women from one from out of Richmond in Florida. There's Brandy,
Tam in the garden.
Yes, Tam. Like, you are the core. And I'm like, it's just so crazy that, how, the digital space with its ups and downs, right? Mm-hmm. That it can just really connect folks. And so I'm excited to have you and to get to know you during this segment. So welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I feel honored to be one of the core people, because I definitely think you are good people. So that's an honor to think that I was in that core group. So I'm flattered.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Tonya, you're down in North Kakalaki, North Carolina, right?
That's right. That's right. And I've, one of the few people I think, but I've lived here all of my life. Never lived in another state. So I don't know. That's a good thing or maybe a bad thing. I'm not sure, but it's the truth.
It's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah.
What's home is home. So let's definitely, dig into your food and garden story just a bit, and growing up in North Carolina, because, from what I know and what I've read, that gardening never felt like a chore to you. And it was something that was just always present in your lineage, with your mom growing. And so definitely just want to start. Let's start with the dirt. Let's start at the garden,
Let's start at the beginning. Yeah. And I guess I'll start with, prior dirt, even before my mom's garden. But, I come from a long line of farmers, sharecroppers. My great-grandfathers, tended the land, which I don't remember them. My grandfather on both sides. My mother's father and my dad's father, both were farmers. So, I remember as a very little girl, going with them to the fields. When I was younger, I was sitting in the truck. My grandma always, made sure I was very nice and comfy. So I recall having a blanket in the truck. I remember jelly sandwiches, but, just kind of hanging out there, under, the truck would be parked under a shade tree while they were either chopping peanuts or, planting tobacco or harvesting corn or something. So, those are my earlier memories. And then later on, when I was a little bit older, I was able to actually help them set out tobacco. So my granddaddy Arthur, which is my father's father, planted a lot of tobacco. And I remember, like I said, sitting on the back of the tractor and, putting in those little tobacco plants in that little rotary and watching it go into the ground. So that's, when I really first started loving the land. I remember, summers of them, picking tobacco and, sitting under the trees, watching the people that were handing tobacco. And then, like I said, eventually graduating to be able to hand some tobacco myself, but just always being, very present with the land and having it play such a huge role in, my family's well-being on both sides of my family.
Yeah, wow. And you know what? Like I love, especially when I'm hearing these stories, I don't hear too, and I know obviously I know that they're present, but the tobacco stories, those are very few on this podcast, and not intentional. And I love it. Whenever I hear a tobacco story and their family planted tobacco, I'm like, oh yeah, they were in it real deep.
Yeah, tobacco was really huge. And I'm from Eastern North Carolina. I'm originally from Ahoskie. Either you've heard of it or not. It's
I have
very
not. I'm like, how do you pronounce it?
I know, right? It's Ahoskie, Ahoskie. So your listeners will have to look it up on a map. But it's in the very eastern part of the state, and tobacco was a very big industry down there in that time. So I don't remember how many acres my grandparents farmed, but tobacco was really big. Like I said, tobacco, peanuts, and corn. Is what I remember the most. I think one of my grandfathers also tended soybeans, but tobacco was huge. And I mean, I literally remember every phase of the process, from planting, the small tobacco plants, in the ground to, like we say in the country, taking in tobacco in the summers, as well as drying the tobacco in the barns and harvesting the tobacco, putting it in the big burlap bags, taking it to the market to sell. I mean, I literally remember every stage of that process. And the smell of dried tobacco, once it cures in the barn, is just a smell I don't think I will ever forget.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a memory.
Yeah, it's like I can still smell it right now, and that smell is just so integral to my memories of my grandfather Arthur in particular. Because I remember he had the barn, which wasn't too far from our house, my grandmother's house, and we would walk over, and every day he would check the temperature in the barns, and he would climb up those railings to the very top of the barn, and he was probably in his 70s then. I don't know how he did that because I know I couldn't
Sure.
climb like that now. But he would climb up to the top and check how the tobacco was cured. But like I said, it was just a smell that I just can't forget and so deeply associate with memories of him.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you for painting that. I was like, I
Yeah.
was there with you. You painted that so beautifully.
Thank you. And like I said, my
Yeah.
other grandfather on my mom's side, his name was Ben Perry. He raised tobacco too, but I don't recall, the barn and him curing tobacco. So I don't know if he went through that step or not. I have to ask my mom. But like I said, as far as the curing and taking it to market, I really do remember that, from my granddaddy Arthur's side.
Wow, wow. And no wonder, I mean, you also, I was reading a little bit more on your website. You said none of this, it never felt like a chore. And I was chuckling at something my grandfather told me down in Mississippi, aka Big Daddy. And I was sitting in their living room. This was about maybe last summer when I was there doing some stories, but just hanging with my family. And I just remember my grandfather telling me, because they obviously, cultivated the land and grew everything. And he was just like, it was a chore. He was like, we were up before dawn. I mean, obviously that's another generation, but he was like, we were up before dawn. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. There were no questions. And this is why we ran away from it.
Yes. So let me clarify. My role in all of this was not a chore. Because if you remember, I was like chilling in the truck, eating my jelly sandwiches, for a good part of the time. And then, when I was setting out tobacco, when I was handing tobacco, it's just because they let me jump in and help out for a little bit. But for me, it was never something that I had to do. So it's a totally different perspective. And you're right. My mom has that same story. My auntie has that same story. It was a chore. They hated it, and they made sure they went to college and got away from that farm. So you're right. My perspective is very, very, very different.
Oh
And
man. And I
and
love that though.
and even for my mom's garden, that wasn't that it was a chore, and that it was one of my chores, to go out and collect the tomatoes and the peas and so forth. But it was really a joy for me, and I think that's, in both instances is where I really developed a connection with the land and with nature and with growing, so that I didn't want to run away from it. And now, as an adult, I have a thriving garden. I've had a garden for many, 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 many years. A couple of years ago on Mother's Day, my husband gifted me with a small greenhouse. So I have a different relationship with it. And I think it's because of the relationship I had then helped shape the love as opposed to an aversion that I have for it now.
Wow. Hubby gifted you with a greenhouse. Oh my gosh.
Yes, yes.
Tanya, if you find a single man down there who's into growing and gardening and he's, willing to just holler at your girl, okay?
I will. I will. And I have a couple of girlfriends in line before you, but I will add you to the list. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Looking forward to
No,
it,
but that's
man. Yeah.
super. That is super sweet. Oh my goodness. Okay, well let's definitely jump into plant and shoot, and which I know I've just again I'm loving all the developments that have been birthing for plant and shoot, but just the beautiful picture that you have painted of chilling in the truck and the smells of tobacco and the drum, like all that, and being out in the garden, and just your journey up until capturing moments of nature, the flowers and things that grow. And so let's definitely touch on this, because this is as you put it, it's a ritual and a self-care practice that which I love how you framed it that way. And so let's tell the audience about Plant and Shoot, and then we'll dive more into what else has been birthed from that platform.
Yeah, sure. So Plant and Shoot started, mainly as a way for me to combine my love of nature, growing plants, flowers, vegetables, what have you, and my love of photography. So it's kind of a cute little play on point and shoot, camera, the point and shoot camera. So it's a little play on that. And I, changed it to Plant and Shoot. But I formed that because, like I said, I garden. I have, tons of, raised beds, and I have a greenhouse and so forth. And I love growing, but my main focus is not on the bounty. I see a lot of people, which is fine, but I see a lot of folks, focusing on how much they harvest, how productive a certain plant is, and all of us as gardeners have our different take and the reason that we're drawn to gardening. And I realized that mine was more for the peaceful aspect and the peaceful vibe that I got when I was growing and playing in the dirt. And also, the peaceful vibe that I got when I was taking pictures. And when I look back at the things that I grow, I realize I was more led to growing certain things because of how visually appealing they would be and how they would look at in a photograph. So I found out that my photography was really driving my gardening, and getting the produce and enjoying, the fruits of my labor was a plus. And I realized it was also a way for me to manage stress, to just find a sense of peace and calm and happiness, amongst the all the things that we're doing, in a given day, the fast pace of life. The garden and my photography really turned out to be a space of peace and a sanctuary for me. And pretty much the same thing that my mom's garden was for me many, many years ago, my garden is today. So that's how Plant and Shoot was born and really is the focus of Plant and Shoot. And I hope that it resonates and connects with other people who need to find a way to, have some peace, dig a little bit into mindfulness without going so far into meditation, because that's not for everyone. So it's really a practical way to gain the benefits of that peaceful space.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you hit a point, you hit a point, you hit a point. So you said meditation, and there are different forms of meditation, obviously, but you said that it's not for everyone. Can you break that down just a bit more?
Yeah, I definitely can, because I'm one of those people, and I truly believe in the benefits of meditation. I mean, you can look online. There's so much written, so many videos. There's just so much out there on the powerful mental and physical benefits of meditation. But generally, when the average person thinks of meditation, they see someone, sitting down, cross-legged, maybe, in a specific hand position, just sitting there. Well, that's not for everyone. In fact, it isn't for me. So what I really also want to get across is meditation is really, in its simplest form, focusing on the present moment. It is doing what you're doing when you're doing it. So it can be running. Walking can be a meditation. Gardening can be a meditation. Drawing, journaling. There's so many ways to be present. And for me, photography is that art form or that creative outlet, because if you're really focusing on what you're taking a picture of, just photography in and of itself has to slow you down. You have to be present. You have to think about what you're doing. So if you bring your whole mind, body, and spirit into the experience of, whether it's, again, taking the picture, gardening, what have you, you are, in a sense, meditating. And I think that is more of a practical and approachable way to introduce meditation to the masses, so we can all start to, stress less, enjoy everyday moments, and, and just stay focused on the here and the now.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Wow, wow, wow. You literally just brought a new, thank you for just thank you for breaking that down. Wow, meditation is not for everyone. You're so right about that, because I feel like there are moments when I feel like I need to meditate and I get even more tense, because I feel like I have to be sitting a certain way. I have to be following my breaths a certain way. So it's just like, it's like that motto of like, you have to just find out what works for you, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
whatever is going to bring your whole self to something that's bringing you peace, joy, and allows you to be still. For some folks, that's eating. See, eating is not for me, because I just swallow my food. So that will never be a form of meditation in my life. Okay.
But
But you're so right, from the drawing, from running. I mean, heck, riding a bicycle, somewhere, like just where you're just so focused, but it doesn't, you don't feel tense in trying to do this practice. Wow. You
right,
are the first to break it down like this.
so if you just focus on what you're doing, while you're doing it, you're not thinking about what happened before that moment. You're not thinking about the call that you just got off of, or the conversation you just had with your kid, or the mail that you just opened. You're not thinking about what you have to do after the activity that you're doing. You're not thinking about what you have to cook for dinner. You're not thinking about, how many cases of coronavirus. You're just focusing on the present. And if you are, walking, focus on, your foot as it touches the ground with each step. If you are taking a picture, feel the camera in your hand. Pay attention to what you are focusing on, whether it is a flower or, it could be a bumblebee. Look at the colors of the flower, the shape of the flower or the vegetable. Just be there, and without even trying, you will feel calmer. You will feel still, and it'll just happen. And if you do that, even if it's just for a couple of minutes, guess what? You've meditated. So the funny thing is, meditation is not for everyone, but actually it is for everyone. It is for everyone. And even if you can't picture yourself meditating, guess what? I can picture you meditating.
And some people may be doing it unintentionally. And which is so funny, because I was taking a walk, and of course I do more of these days. And I was walking with a friend, and just a lot lately. I mean, I've always been obsessed with flowers, right? Mm-hmm. Looking at flowers. And it was this one day, and I said to my friend, I said, isn't it amazing that I was like, and I reminded her, it's just like, when we're younger, we're learning to color within the lines. We have Crayolas, that color, can color a piece of paper white, and I mean, not white. Well, if you're using a black piece of paper, but you get what I mean, yellow and red and blue. But I said, look at the color, look at how nature bursts these flowers. Mm-hmm. These flowers bloom, and they're different colors. And I really had a moment. I was like, look at this one flower. I said, it's both pink and yellow at the same time. And I just had to just stand there and look at it. I'm like, this is just amazing. I'm like, these are literally like our crayons that we look at. Like, as I'm walking down the street, right. Color is everywhere. Right. And I had a moment, Tonya. I had a moment. And I know that was my meditative moment.
It was a meditative moment, and that moment of awareness, that was the meditative moment. When you noticed, the varying colors, or just noticing the flower itself, that was a meditative moment. And that's, what's so exciting about, blending gardening and nature with photography. You think about things and you see things with a photographer's eye. It's like photography helps cue up your eyesight and your awareness, so that you notice things that you normally would not notice. You may have a flower that's blooming right, in your yard or your doorstep, or in your house for that matter, in your garden, but you're so busy, you're caught up in the motion, you're going, that you don't even take time to notice. So, just like I said, that noticing and awareness is in essence, meditation, because for that second, you're right there. And you're clearly seeing what's in front of you.
All right, folks, we're going to take a really quick break, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Perfect Day, produced by Artists Authentic. For more of Authentic's work, visit allornothingstudios.com. This podcast is brought to you by Giant Food. Whether you are concerned about diabetes, heart health, losing weight, or just want to improve family meal times, Giant has a team of nutritionists ready to help you make the best decisions to meet your health and wellness goals. You can check out their personalized consultations online or by phone. Just go to giantfood.com/nutrition, or they have nutritionists who are available to answer any of your questions at nutrition@giantfood.com.
Okay, so Tonya, with Plant and Shoot, I feel like there's so many other things that have, from the outside looking in, that have birthed from that platform, or just other experiences, in life. And one of those things that I definitely also want to talk about on this show is the Zen Camera Club, which I'm so excited about. And just thank you so much. Like I've been learning so much during this episode. I'm gonna have a new perspective on meditation and just nature and just being present. I really appreciate that. But let's talk about the Zen Camera Club. Zen. I think all of us can use a lot more Zen in our lives right now. Don't you agree?
Yes, definitely so. There's a lot going on, in our lives right now, as a result of coronavirus, and even before the pandemic, it was just a lot that was going on. So yes, we do all need more Zen in our lives, and it's something that we have to be intentional about bringing into our space, because otherwise, as I say, life will just run you over. So if you don't create that space for yourself, it won't happen. And it's so, so, so vitally important to our mental health, our physical health. It's just really a part of self-care. And it can be so simple and easy to bring into your space. And, as I mentioned before, photography is a way that I do that. So I created the Zen Camera Club, as a sort of an offshoot, from Plant and Shoot, because I realized, with Plant and Shoot, I have sort of two camps. I have the people that are, strictly gardeners, and, and that's great. I sort of have two brains, the gardening brain and the photography brain. But then I also realized, I had another group of folks that, were into the Zen aspect, the photography aspect, the mindfulness, the peacefulness, the meditation. And I really wanted to separate the two so I could give each group the attention and the focus that it needed, and not muddy the water so much. Because, if you're not into, meditation and mindfulness, it would kind of sound woo woo. And I was losing interest in some people. So that's why I created that. And it focuses entirely on everything that we've just discussed. So it's really exciting. The account is new and the space is new. It's growing. It pairs along with a photography workshop that I teach, which is called Zen Behind the Lens. And like I said, it focuses on everything that we've talked about, but we dig deeper into, meditation. We talk about books, we talk about practices, we talk about ways to incorporate this as a self-care practice and a ritual in small ways into your everyday life.
Wow. It's so funny because I take a lot of photos of flowers because I'm obsessed. And, it's one of those things where, I'm sure like a ton of us, we have a ton of photos in just our mobile phones, right?
Right.
And it's my nature photos, Tonya, that I never want to delete. I never want to delete them. When I see that pink flower, when I see that hydrangea, when I see that gabbera, like I don't want to delete them at all.
Right.
At all. It creates this beautiful palette that I can just stare at all day. I'll delete anything else when I'm like, I will not delete this flower photo.
And you're right. And I'm the same way. And the good thing about images, it can create that moment for you while you are in that moment while you're taking that picture. But then there's also such presence that a nature image can bring to you. You can look at that picture later. And that's something that, I teach in, in my classes, and and I'll just mention it online as well. Sometimes, the picture that you take, save that picture, because you can find solace and presence in that image. Looking at it, a week from now or a month from now, it can bring you right back to that moment if you slow down and take the time to acknowledge it. So, you can have a mindful moment just looking at that picture, of your hydrangea. If you just sit with it for just a second, it can bring back, all the feelings that, that moment originally brought to you.
Yeah. And even if it brings up any like toxic emotions that might have occurred that day. And by the end of that, because that's part of our healing too, is really, getting that toxic, all that toxic energy out, but also just looking, whatever feelings that photo, brings up, it's acknowledging that. But also, I know, just speaking from a personal experience, that whenever I do look at a photo or when I'm just out in nature, it just reminds me that I bloom and go through storms and weather storms just like the outside,
Exactly. Exactly.
It's such a reflection of my life, and that's my personal story. So,
and and you raise a good point, because whatever that moment brings up for you, and you're right, sometimes it can be something that's toxic or troubling. The key is to just sit with it. So oftentimes we'll try to bury feelings and emotions or ignore them, but the real growth comes when you can just sit with it. Feel whatever it is, whether it's hurt or anger or sadness. Just sit with it, without any judgment. Don't tell yourself, well, I handled that wrong, or I should have done this, or I shouldn't feel this way. The real growth comes in just sitting with it, acknowledging it. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can this help me? What is this trying to teach me? And that again goes back to the self-care, practice that we talked about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, last thing I want to touch on is definitely, we, have already mentioned these, meditations, but you recently joined, and it may not have been recently, I don't know, you'll tell us this, but I know that you are with Insight Timer and you do these wonderful guided meditations, which I did one earlier today, and I still need to do my review. Okay. So after Tonya gives you all the information, you got to check this out, and you have to check out her profile. And, it was, I actually did it twice, because I did the first time and I was just like, okay, the second time, like, let me really just soak in the words. And they just really spoke to me. And the thing that really jumped out, and I think it was the very first one that you have up in your channel, it was about, how connecting, with nature can just shift how you're responding to life. And I believe you just mentioned that a moment ago. Mm-hmm. And, what's one of the first things that we do, Tonya, when we're stressed, when we're maxed out, our bandwidth has popped. We flock to beaches, we flock to the woods, we go hiking. Nature is just always like that. If maybe after food, okay, for it. But it's like nature is, I think we all have like this commonality amongst one another, that nature is like one of the first things nature is one of the first things that we flock to.
Yeah, it heals.
We need to relieve that stress. I have to go to the beach. I have to sit in front of the water. I have to hear those waves. I need to go hiking for 5 hours.
Yeah, or I just need to get outside. I have to get outside. I have to get out of this room or this building or this office,
Yes. And that yesterday, oh my goodness, girlfriend, I was like, I've had it with these Zoom calls. I want to go talk to my plants. Okay. That's exactly what I did.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, definitely want you to, let's just touch on Insight Timer. I think this is amazing. I look forward to doing more of these meditations. I'm so super excited. Didn't know about Insight Timer until you mentioned it on your Instagram, or I think that's how I learned about it. But that really just stuck out to me, and just, again, how connecting, you said connecting with the flow of nature can shift how you're responding to life right now. And if no other time, like now, I think now is the time that people, and which is great. Again, there's just so many positives and obviously a lot of negatives, but more people are spending time outdoors, and they are connecting with nature, and they are building their gardens. They are planting their seedlings and, their flowers. And I just think it's so true. But I really love that guided meditation. So let us know more about this, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited to be a part of that platform. It is growing, more and more every day. And, my meditations, are really directed to, the individuals that we spoke about earlier, the individuals who, need maybe to be active while they're meditating, either walking or taking a picture or gardening. The meditations are geared towards those individuals. Like I said, I consider myself in that camp. And there's always a nature element in the meditations. I have 4 on the platform right now, and I have another that I'll be loading probably later today or tomorrow. And it takes a couple of days, for them to actually be visible to everyone. But, that is the focus. And my meditations on Insight Time are also, unique in that they do incorporate some element of photography in them as well. Because the way I see it, every time we take a picture is an opportunity to be present. And I know almost everyone, has at least a cell phone. A DSLR camera is not required, although that's what I use most of the time. But, most of us have a cell phone. Most people are taking a picture of something every day. Whether it's a food label or something you're eating or whatever, we're taking some picture almost every day. That moment is an opportunity to be present.
Wow.
So
I know I'm taking a photo of something every single day.
Yeah. So next time you take one, just, pause for a second and just, notice, try to engage your senses. If you have time, notice what you hear, notice what you see, notice what you smell. Particularly if you're outside. But, you can do that when you're in the house too. But yeah, try to engage your senses and just, every time you, switch your phone to camera mode, just let that be a trigger for you, or an anchor for you to be present. Could be 5 seconds if that's all you have. But just if you keep doing that, you will train your mind to be mindful in other areas of your life.
Tonya, this was the most meditative conversation I've had thus far here on Edible Activist.
I'm happy. And we tied it to the land, we tied it to nature, because again, I do, my meditations, 99% of them are, outside in my garden, in a park or just wherever I'm on in nature. I can be sitting on my front porch, but, I meditate in nature. That's where I find my calm. That's where I find my peace. And, I think, the camera is a great tool to just, anchor you in the present moment and, help you just appreciate all the moments that we're experiencing right now and just the beauty and the wonder, that the world is gifting us right now. I think it would be a shame to not pay attention to this moment.
Wow. Tonya, where can folks connect with you online?
People can find me on Instagram. That's where I'm hanging out the most. So my Instagram is at the Zen Camera Club, spelled, normal way. And you'll also find me on Plant and Shoot on Instagram. But like I said, right now I'm hanging out a little bit more in the Zen Camera Club. So I welcome, any and everyone who's interested in that space to join me there. I'm also on Facebook under Plant and Shoot, although I'm hanging out over there a little bit less. I spend most of my time on Instagram, and of course my website that is plantandshoot.com. And if folks find me over on my website, they can get a free copy of my Zen Behind the Lens online guide, which goes into more detail in some of the aspects that we've been covering today, integrating mindfulness and meditation with photography. So if they join my newsletter, they can receive that free guide that will introduce them to this space and get them started on their mindfulness journey.
Wonderful, 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 wonderful. All right. So before I let you go, I got a couple rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready for me?
I think so.
I think you'll be good.
I always hear other people on podcasts and get so nervous. I'm like, ooh, how would I answer that?
All right. First up, what is your favorite veggie?
Brussels sprouts.
Ooh, yes.
I love them roasted. I can just eat them, just pop them in my mouth, just eat them.
Especially with that crispy edge, that crispy outside.
Yes, a little bit burnt. It probably shouldn't be burnt, but that's when it's good.
I love it. All right. What is your favorite fruit?
That's easy. Blueberries.
Oh, nice. I actually made a blueberry and banana shake yesterday.
Ooh, that sounds good. Yeah,
that's so good. All right, Tonya, sweet, spicy, sour, salty, savory, or bitter?
And I have to choose one, right?
You know what? If you need to choose more than one, go for it. There are no rules.
Okay. Okay. I would say salty and sweet, because my all-time favorite snack in the whole wide world are chocolate-covered almonds. Yeah. So
I love chocolate-covered almonds. It's like the best snack ever.
Yeah, that's my fave. Yeah. So
okay. All right. Last question. One action step someone can take towards edible activism today.
The first step is to just be present when they're in nature. As I discussed, there, tools, your camera, having a garden can help you. But, if you want to start today, just walking outside and being present and just noticing what is around you, the trees, the leaves, the flowers, the birds, the sky. Notice it all and just give thanks.
Awesome. Tonya, thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Peace and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Melissa. I appreciated this so much. I enjoyed talking with you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We are here live on Full Service Radio every Wednesday at 11 a.m., where you can catch today's episode on fullserviceradio.org, as well as iTunes and Spotify. Be sure to follow me at Food Talks in Color on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Are you an edible activist? Sure you are. Come join me on the show. I would love to feature you. Just shoot me a DM on the gram. Peace and blessings all. And remember, there is no culture without agriculture.